Hey guys. Okay, so I have to be really quiet because it is like 6:30 in the morning and my sister is still asleep and literally our rooms are like within arm length of each other. So I have to be really quiet and our walls are so thin. Our doors and our walls are so thin, so she probably can hear everything that's coming out of my mouth. But I have to be kind of quiet. I have to bring the mic closer to my mouth, meaning you guys can probably hear all the things that's happening as I'm talking. It's like really weird. Like I like doing Splendid Chat and everything and the whole microphone thing. It's really like professional. But it's like it picks up everything like as I'm talking. So I'm sorry for all the mouthy, tonguey, salivy noises. But anyways, hello guys, assalamu alaikum. Um, Hope you guys are doing well. So let's just get right into the topic. Basically, the other week, actually, last week, I got a DM from, I believe it was a sister. It was a girl. Yeah, she was a girl. Yes, she was a Muslim girl. I don't know where she lived, but I'm assuming it was like a majority Muslim country or a Muslim country. And she was basically, asking me about like what it's like, being Muslim in the United States. And she was, asking me, well, I probably won't get into exactly what exactly we talked about. I won't like digress into that, but I just wanted to kind of open the discussion of what it's like being a Muslim in America. So she was asking me some questions because some of the things that she's seen on YouTube by Americans. She was kind of like a little bit I would say like kind of appalled because I guess some of these people that she's watched kind of like they're very like they're very open. They're very yeah, that's what I can say. They're very open, and they kind of openly talk about things like sex and stuff like that, in a non-Islamic way. That's the best way I can put it. So she was asking me and about these things and just like how it is the lifestyle of Americans, like are they accepting of Muslims and stuff like that. So I kind of like gave her this answer. I hope I answered it correctly. I think she's probably watching. I'm sure she found me on YouTube. So if you're watching, hey girl, assalamu alaikum. But today, I'm not gonna so much talk about what we talked about, but I'm just gonna open the discussion, like I said. So, what is it like being a Muslim in America? And, honestly, it kind of depends. For the most part, America doesn't really have good things to say about Muslims. A lot of Americans are very ignorant to Islam. And I don't mean that in like well, it is pretty negative. That's pretty bad. But, I don't mean that in a mean way, but I just mean in an honest way. A lot of Americans, they're very ignorant to Islam in itself. So therefore they already have these messages coming from the media, and then they kind of make their own opinion based on that without actually asking a Muslim themselves, if that makes sense. And I've come across people like this so many times, and then you have to explain to them, hey, Muslims are not gonna blow up a store next door. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to kind of tell them that Islam means peace. You cannot go and kill innocent people. Like, it's wrong to, oppress people. It's wrong to, force religion on people. Like, you have to kind of like do damage control because, these people in the media are making Islam to be, this harsh, barbaric religion. And then it makes Muslims look bad. It makes us look like barbarians. And we're not barbarians. We are good people, for the most part. Yes, there are factions of people who, have made Islam into, or made, who have their own views of Islam that are not Islam, if that makes sense. But you have to take into consideration, you kind of have to have some common sense with this. Like, our majority of Muslims out here, blowing up buildings. Are majority of Muslims doing that? You have to kind of ask that question. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But when it comes to living in America as a Muslim, it really depends. America is a big country. Okay, it is very large. It is filled with different kinds of people. What happens in the South might not necessarily happen in the West, and what happens in the West might not necessarily happen Northwest or Northeast, or you know what I'm saying? There are different kinds of there are different people living in different areas of the United States. So, but that can definitely change your experience of living in America as a Muslim. Now, for example, I'm just going to be honest, based on my own experience and things I've heard. Unfortunately, the South is a bit more openly racist than the rest of the country. I'm not going to lie, like it is. And there is still there are still strong remnants of, the past in the South, and the lack of acceptance of, not even just Muslims, but black. Well, I mean, obviously, being Muslim, you can be black, but I'm talking about in terms of race, black people and maybe Hispanics and stuff like that. It's pretty, some places, more than others, but it does have its strong vibe of racism, unfortunately. Not all Southern people like this. Obviously, there are Muslims living in the South and stuff like that. And then also, your race can play a part in what it's like being Muslim in America. Now, I'm black, okay, obviously. So that, there are already stereotypes that surround being black, and then you consider being a woman. I'm a woman, and there are stereotypes, and there are things that affect women, and that's also something you have to take in consideration. And then also, I'm Muslim, so you kind of have three things against you. So, but maybe if you are you could be white, and you can be a male, and you can be Muslim, so that can also change, because let's be honest, with men, depending on the race and stuff like that, for the most part, you can't really tell if a man is Muslim. Now, sometimes you can, maybe if you see a guy who's walking down with a thobe and a kufi or something like that, then yeah, you can say, hey, he's a Muslim, he got a beard and everything. But, if he's just wearing, some jeans, a t-shirt, and he's probably white, you kind of can't tell that he's Muslim, and therefore he might not have as bad of an experience, because he's not outwardly looking Muslim, opposed to maybe a hijabi like myself. You already know, hey, this girl is Muslim because of my headscarf. So that's something to keep into consideration as well. And again, back to the ignorance, unfortunately, people in the United States are very ignorant to Islam. I think people in the West are very ignorant to Islam, and that's why it is really important as Muslims for us to give dawah. And I'm telling this to myself before I'm telling you guys. It is important for us as Muslims to tell people about religion, not even just to convert people. That shouldn't necessarily be our goal, because that's ultimately guidance comes from Allah. That's not our that's not our call. But we are called to tell people about religion, so it can also be a way of protecting us, because hey, if I tell people that I am not a threat to you, I will not betray you, I will not oppress you, I am not a danger to you, it can be a way of safety for the Muslims, because people are not going to think that we're crazy. So but there's just something about America that, I love America. I grew up here, but there is that sense of frustration, because so many people just don't know about Islam. And even if they don't hate Muslims, there's still that kind of frustration. It's dang, I wish you kind of knew my how I feel, like my struggles sometimes, my routine, because sometimes, you know, I mean, really, I think 100% of the time, a lot of people don't like Muslims because of their ignorance, because they don't know. It's not really, I mean, there are people who do, I guess, quote unquote, know, but they, you know, just straight up hate Muslims. But a lot of the time it's because they hear all these things and they don't really go and do their own research. They just hear from the guy down the street, oh, I heard, you know, I saw a Muslim once, and, you know, I saw him da 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 da, you know what I mean? So, you know, or they'll hear it from the media, and then, you know, they'll kind of form their own opinion. So yeah, so that's also something that can play a factor in your experience as a Muslim living in America. And so what else? Um, Also, you know, even your lifestyle as can is a bit different to those who live in majority Muslim countries. You know, there isn't a lot. I mean, again, it depends on where you live. Maybe I would assume if you live in New York, I've never lived in New York, but if you live in New York City, I'm assuming, you know, there are more like halal options, halal foods. So depending on where you live, halal restaurants might not be available to you. You know, where if there aren't a big Muslim population in a specific area, in a specific state, you might not be able to eat halal the way you would like. Now, I mean, if in my opinion, you know, if I would suggest if your life becomes super duper hard, you know, you can't practice your religion, then you should definitely move, because, you know, that's the most important thing. But yeah, like where I live, you know, there are halal stores where you can go buy your meats and stuff like that, but it's not like, you know, like it's not um it's not everywhere. It's not like, you know, I can just like go down the street and I have to, you know, there's a halal restaurant. No, I actually have to go down the street and make a couple turns. And I mean, it's probably less than like 20 minutes away, but actually there's a halal place right next to, well, okay, you know what, all right, maybe I'm bluffing a bit. There are quite a bit halal places, but it's not as prevalent as, you know, obviously somewhere like in, like, Saudi Arabia or something like that. But you know, that's also something I heard some people like, you know, there are places where there aren't, you know, halal restaurants within miles and miles. So, you know, that's also something, you know, that some Muslims have to kind of go through as well, when it comes to, you know, their dietary needs. And, you know, there also is, I wouldn't say, because temptation is everywhere. Honestly, there's temptation everywhere. No matter if you live in a non-Muslim country, a Muslim country, there are temptations everywhere. And what I mean by temptations, I mean by, you know, the allure of wanting to do something that's not necessarily, you know, permissible Islamically. So I think that it it becomes a bit heightened, you know, living in the West. And, you know, because there are so many things that are haram, it's ridiculous. And so many things are haram um, that are part of people's day-to-day lives. And it is part of the culture, it's part of the norm. But you know, as a Muslim, it can have its pose its problems, because, you know, you have to kind of be diligent. You have to have a lot of self-control, self-discipline, to avoid those things. And you have to you have to constantly be on the alert with this, because the culture is different. The morals are different. You know, Islamic morals aren't necessarily, you know, aren't always something that we share with you know, like non-Muslims. So I mean, obviously something like, you know, Muslims don't believe in killing innocent people and non-Muslims don't believe in killing innocent people. So that's something we can agree on. But, you know, for example, like eating pork, like Muslims don't eat pork, but non-Muslims, you know, it's kind of part of their day-to-day, you know, meals. And so that's just one example. You know, drinking alcohol, it's like embedded in the culture, like drinking alcohol. And unfortunately, some Muslims do get they do get lured into things like that. And you know, that is not permissible. Alcohol Islamically is not permissible. And the reason why for that is because it's not that it's you know, it's not that it doesn't have its benefits, because, you know, for example, I've heard, like, you know, drinking wine, I think once a day, like a tiny glass of wine, does have its health benefits, I think, for your heart and stuff like that. But we believe that the cons outweigh the pros, in that, like, you know, there are so many instances of people getting intoxicated and bad things happening, you know. So we just believe that the cons outweigh the pros. So I just wanted to say that for anybody who, you know, doesn't understand why. But, you know, the good thing after everything that I've said, because for the most part, I've kind of said some negative things, there are Muslims in the United States. Like, if any of you guys are Muslim and you live in a specific country and you are wanting to live in the United States, maybe come to school, there are Muslims. Maybe try and look at the demographic of people in a specific state, and maybe go by there if you want to kind of live in an area where there's Muslims. Definitely do your research for sure. I don't even want to make it seem that like non-Muslims are bad people. They're great people. Like, I have non-Muslim friends, and, you know, they are awesome people, and, like, you know, it's not as scary as people think. But you just have to kind of be on the you just have to be diligent when it comes to your lifestyle. You have to kind of put your foot down. You have to say, hey, I can do this, but I can't do that. You have to draw the line. But it's not like this big scary place. You know, unfortunately, there are, you know, people who are very not accepting of Muslims, but I would like to believe they live in a very concentrated area. You know, there are, like, where I live, alhamdulillah, for the most part, I don't feel oppressed. I don't feel like I'm in danger every time I walk out of the house. You know, I try to be as friendly as possible, you know. And it's great. I honestly, alhamdulillah, like, I'm very blessed, and I'm very happy with, you know, how I'm able to live my life as a Muslim, and you know, live amongst, you know, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Now, I wouldn't say harmony, because, you know, there are some people who have hidden agendas. They might not be outwardly, you know, oh, I don't like Muslims, but, you know, they have some reservations in their hearts and in their minds. So you can't change that. But as long as you can practice your religion, and you can you know, draw the line. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, alhamdulillah, it's not as bad as maybe some media outlets make it seem to be. But yeah, you guys, that's basically it. I want to hear you guys, is because I'm just one Muslim. My experience is not the same as yours. I would love to know, like, what it's like wherever you live. If you live in the United States and you're Muslim, I would like to know. If you live you know, in somewhere in the West, and because there's a lot of countries that are similar, like the UK and stuff like that. I would like to know what's it like being, you know, a Muslim in the UK, or a Muslim in the US, or Muslim anywhere. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. And this is where I press the button and I'm done. All right, goodbye.